obviously, factoring into this is the climate debate. We've got some of the hottest temperatures on record, a heat dome sitting over large parts of the United States at the moment. In fact, Monday was the hottest day ever recorded globally. Can we continue to burn oil and gas? I mean, it is a moral debate which the UN wants us to engage with.
We absolutely need to be looking at clean energy sources and energy efficient means. Again, I mentioned some of the solar, the wind. There are other means to do so. And it is very hot here in New Jersey right now. I can just tell you that. And again, we saw with the Canadian wildfires that will continue through the summer. These are all impacts of climate change. And we need to get our heads around it, because pretending as if it's not happening is not doing us any favors and is not helping our environment or our health.
I think we've got Brian Taylor.
Renewables.
Yeah, just a final point before we move on more. As Brian says, the Secretary General is saying we need to move on. And you could look at countries like Pakistan or Bangladesh, who were hit really hard by the rising price of gas last year. They were having to work by candlelight because they couldn't afford the supplies of LNG. The irony here is that actually renewable energy is far cheaper than laying gas networks. And so there needs to be encouragement, doesn't there? If collectively we need to go much quicker towards the renewables, there needs to be more emphasis, doesn't there, on helping developing nations to get there?
There certainly needs to be an emphasis on renewable energy. When I worked for Congressman Kinzinger, one of the things that we introduced as far as legislation was to encourage the EU to stop buying from Russia, but also not just that, but to have a more secure and more diverse energy independence. And I think that's where one of the biggest issues here is diversification of our energy sources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Iran is working hand in hand with Russia. And again, the tighter sanctions we put on Russia, especially in the terms of energy, oil, gas, that's a retaliation, a reaction because of that. They are close allies. And to pretend otherwise would be naive.
We've been here before. Lots of people talking about China, that they have a very different type of society, different value systems. We don't know whether they would develop it for better or for worse. But of course, the Americans would very much want a strategic advantage in this. And you can see why they might cast China as the problem child in this development.
China is the problem child in this development. I mean, quite frankly, they're using it to gain information, to, with their Russian counterparts, influence our elections. And how many scammers we've had, how much intellectual property has been stolen through, let's just look at Amazon. How many products are coming out of China that have been stolen from different manufacturers or creators, small business owners? They're losing their products to Chinese companies, probably the Chinese government, quite frankly, coming in and taking that IP from them. So yes, they are. It's like a huge concern. It's why we are looking at banning TikTok, right? The federal government in the United States is looking to ban TikTok essentially for all federal employees, but beyond that, because of the threats that we face from China's influence and malign influence at that.
You're never going to satisfy people on that, Brian. One of the things that Denis Hassabis has talked about, and Sir Nigel actually approved of what he's discussed in this article, is that we set up international bodies to oversee the development of AI. So something akin to CERN, which has been used for research into particle physics, or something like the IAEA, which has been the watchdog overseeing the development of nuclear technologies. Is that a good idea?
Sounds like a very good idea, because he's making that in the context of saying that it simply will not be possible for one country, one company, even a small group of countries. There will have to be international cooperation given the scale of this. If I could just say a tiny thing, I'm slightly skeptical about AI. I take the point about fear and trepidation, but I just wonder whether, I remain to be convinced whether it can completely replace the creative instinct that there is in the human brain. I recall seeing an interview a few weeks ago with Woodward and Bernstein, Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, the Watergate journalists, and they were presented with a description of themselves drawn up by AI. They pointed out that it was basically a cuttings job taken from a document that was given to a conference at which they were speaking.
But that's not what Demis Hassabis is saying. He's saying AI is going to be the most beneficial technology ever. In 5 to 10 years, we're getting dozens of cures every month as opposed to one every few years. He thinks the advances will be such that there are cures to diseases that we've not even envisaged, and they will come quickly.
understand that, but he's of course arguing from a position of trying to advance and advantage his own company and his own operation. I mean, I'm just slightly skeptical that it replaces the creative instinct. I don't think at this stage that, for example, the source for Woodward and Bernstein was Deep Throat, was a human source. I just don't see DeepMind replacing Deep Throat anytime soon.
Maura, do you believe in the benefits that are being proffered?
I believe in the benefits of technology. I'm still waiting on my Nimbus 3000 from the Harry Potter series to come to life. But no, for AI, I believe that it's going to, as people who have left Google have warned us about, that there's a real threat to human society with the advances that AI can have, not only from identity scammers and identity theft, but from ChatGPT taking over. Kids are submitting a storyline and they're getting a whole 3-page article written for them. I believe as a society can make us, quite frankly, a little dumber, and we really do need to be conscious of it.
Why has cocaine been found in the White House, Maura?
While the rest of the American people across the country were celebrating our independence, no offense, somebody decided to go to the White House who had the privilege of doing so, and they brought cocaine into the White House, and yet the Secret Service can't identify that person. First of all, you have to submit your social security number. You have to hand over everything into a cubby that you're assigned to that number. So I don't really understand why someone would have the incredible disrespect to bring that into the White House for a tour, and why we can't figure out who it was.
Yes. Well, clearly someone wasn't aware that they were going to be searched on the way in, and I think we can well imagine that they got rid of it before they were searched. We're out of time. Brian, Maura, thank you very much indeed for your company this evening. We will, of course, be back same time tomorrow. Thanks very much for watching.